الله بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. السلام عليكم wa rahmatullah. Wow, you guys seem pretty excited. Can you all do me a favor? Everyone come in here closer. Everyone bunched together. You all come closer. Come up even. Everyone on the edges, just come in here in front so there's no one on the periphery. Closer this way here. You all at the edge here, come in here. Come closer. MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah. MashaAllah. It's really nice to be here with you all. And I wanted to share with you just a few things. Hopefully they can be of benefit to you. Things that I've experienced in my own life as I transitioned into Islam, and particularly as it relates to relationships. And I think we all know, I don't have to sit up here and tell you the importance of relationships and what it means and the friends that you take. We all know that. That's something that we've heard time and time again, and we all know the reality of it. You know, I think really that it's when we learn stories about these relationships that really bring to life our understanding of them, as opposed to just hearing about, you know, the importance of relationships. Because we all really do know, and that we all have family members or know other people that are friends with our family or other people in the community. That stories of things that have happened to people that by virtue of being with the wrong people. And unfortunately, is it that you have that different types of substances that exist that in the world that will be good for your health and that will help you. And then you have some type of substances that are kind of neutral. They don't really harm you, they don't benefit you. And then you have substances that are toxic. And that's just in relation to overall health, but that also applies to relationships. Is that there are people that will be like they'll be like toxins to your body, and they will ruin your spiritual life. And before I do that, though, I wanted to just briefly mention to you one great principle. Actually, no, I'm going to save that to the end. I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to give you a little bit about my own life, and so you all can come to know who I am and what it is that I'm doing here before you. And I'm interested to know, other than Ryan, are there any other converts in this room? Rashad? Anyone else? No one else? Okay. And I converted at a young age. I converted at the age of 19. And for me, my path to Islam was a long, drawn-out path. That it was several years of changes that eventually led me to become Muslim. And many of those details, I would probably tell you if we weren't in a mosque. That I will keep it general, since we are in a mosque. And that actually I can attribute my Islam, if I want to, that focus on one particular blessing of it, relates to a relationship that I had with a particular individual. And some of you might know Osama Cannon. Some of you know, some of you heard of Osama Cannon. So we grew up together, and I've known him since 6th grade. We actually met at science camp in 6th grade, of all places. Who would have thought? And we went to middle school together, we went to high school together, and then we went to 1 year of college together, which is where that's right around the time we became Muslim. And that as we were getting closer and closer to Islam, that we were having to shed many of the ways that we previously viewed the world. And we were going through a process of change where a number of things that we had previously done that we started no longer to do, that we started to view things slightly differently. And we were very open to that other ways of thinking, and we were very open to that different types of cultures. And that openness is what enabled us to be exposed eventually to that Islam, see it as something superior, and then believe in it and actually convert to it. And that what was interesting, though, is that some of the people that I knew that before Islam, is that when I became Muslim, is that my relationship drastically changed. And I just recently read this beautiful phrase. It's in Arabic, but I'll translate it. And it's so wise. It says that من أحبك لشيء أبغضك لزواله. Whoever loves you for some particular thing, some worldly thing, we'll translate it like that, that will dislike you when that thing's gone. Right? If someone loves you for a particular thing, right, that once you remove that thing, that all of a sudden, that love that they had for you, if it's predicated upon, if it's based upon that thing, that worldly thing, if you remove it, there goes the love. And I witnessed that firsthand. Many of the people that I would spend time with before Islam, they weren't Muslims, they didn't know any better, or maybe they did know better, but they still did things that you shouldn't be doing. They did things that could put yourself in potential danger in the future. And we don't need to go into detail about those things because we all know the type of things that people do. But what was interesting is that once that I became Muslim, and that was my whole thing, is that when I wanted to become Muslim, that I wanted to leave the life of Jahiliyyah that I led before. And I remember that I was really into records, I had turntables, and that I was really into music. And I wanted to enter into Islam pure. And so what I did was that anything that I purchased from haram money, and that I collected it, I put it all in a dumpster, and I threw it all completely away, and I wanted to become Muslim clean. I wanted to leave the past, and I didn't want there to be any remnants left over coming into Islam. Because when I converted, I wanted to take it seriously. I wanted to get my act together, and I wanted to focus. And if I take it back to relationships now, some of these people that we used to spend time with before Islam, is that oftentimes that the love and what it really was a pseudo-love. It wasn't a true love. Because true love will remain. If you love someone for their physical beauty, right, and then all of a sudden they become disfigured, then all of a sudden you're no longer going to love that person. But if you love someone for a true reason, real love, is that even if their outward figure changed, you still love that person. Right? You still love that person. And so, that when some of these things that were no longer there, that all of a sudden is that the dynamics of the relationship started to change. And this is where I really started to think, okay, what do I do at this point? Right, I'm a new convert. At the same time, you don't want to just be hard on people and to leave all your friends that you had before. But at the same time, you're trying to take your religious life seriously. So what do? It's from here that I much later came to understand that this additional wisdom that I want you all to remember. And so, what was the first one that I mentioned? The first wisdom? Man, you all are going to fail the test already. If I was Imam Zayd Shakir, I'd make you all do push-ups and jumping jacks for not being able to get this. What did I say? The first one. What was the first principle? The first wisdom. Right. There's no more love. Right? If you love someone, that whoever loves you for a worldly reason, when that worldly reason goes away, is that so does their love. Okay, you can phrase it how you want to phrase it. But the second thing is that this is a golden principle. This is really golden on how it is that we interact with people. Okay, so one of the righteous that they said is that people are of two types: sheep and wolves. Right? There are people that are sheep-like. They're very kind. They won't harm anyone. And they're like sheep. They don't ever think of that harming other people, that taking from the rights of other people. But then you have people that are like wolves. They're like hunters. It's that they're always predatorial. It's that they're trying to find ways to get over on people. They're trying to find ways to manipulate people. They're trying to find ways to subdue people and to make them be underneath them and do what it is that they want them to do and that type of thing. We've all come across people like that, right? So, this person said, he says, if you see people that being like wolves, he said, don't be a sheep and get eaten. If you see people being like wolves, he says, don't be sheep and get eaten. And he said, if you see people being like sheep, don't be wolves and eat them. Don't be wolves and eat them. Look at the beauty of this statement. Is that this is something that I really believe that we need to uphold. That these virtues. I was listening to... I'm being recorded, so I got to be careful here. If I would share more with you, if I didn't feel like I was being recorded. Anyhow. Well, why not? Yallah. I was listening to an interview of Joe Biden, the Vice President of the United States. And he was talking about some of those horrible comments that Donald Trump said. And that the person interviewing him was quoting something that he said about his own mother. His mother hated bullies. And his mother gave his brother that $1, which I guess maybe way back in the day that was actually a significant amount of money, that for standing up to another bully and putting a bully in his place. Her mother wanted to instill that principle into her son, that if you stand up to a bully and put them in their place, is that even if you bloody their nose, now I'm not condoning violence here, I'm just quoting the story, is that she actually gave him money for doing so. And that what the guy said to that Joe Biden then in relation to the comments of Trump is that what you meant in relation to Donald Trump? Right? That you would basically bloody his nose if he would have said something about that, about one of your family members, and he said yes. Right? Now, I'm not condoning violence, but what I am trying to say is that this is something that we should all, and I try to instill this in my own children, is that being those type of people that stand up for the people that are the sheep-like is a very, very noble thing. But the true person is the one who can prevent themselves from getting devoured by the people that are wolf-like, but at the same time is that they know how to refrain themselves and maintain good relationships when they're around people that are like sheep. Right? That's the true person. Is that the people that are more sheep-like, they're just more innocent, they're more that pure-hearted, and that you could actually find, and we should remember our Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, أَكْثَرُ أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ الْبُلِحِ. The vast majority of the people of paradise are the simpletons. And someone who's simple can be manipulated. Right? A simple person can be manipulated. But our Prophet is telling us that in paradise, even though that's not seen as something that's praiseworthy here in this world, is that the vast majority of the people of paradise are simple people. And that one of the things that you find nowadays is that immense manipulation. And without going into too much detail about that, this is part of the world in which we live. Is that people are being manipulated. And oftentimes for that very gross self-interest or corporate interests. And that this is being played out quite literally on a worldwide scale. Right? How could you have some continents like that of Africa, where 95% of the resources of Africa are owned, I don't know how someone, anyhow, are owned by people that are not Africans? How could that be? That 95, and that is not just Africa, this is most of the, what they call the developing world, is that many of the resources tend to be owned that by people outside of that particular country. This is just a small little example. Is that the way that some people in their wolf-like nature will try to manipulate that other type of people. But when it comes to your own interactions with people, is that there are certain things that you need to learn, is that if someone is being wolf-like to you, don't be a sheep. you need to learn how to be slightly wolf-like, right? With the intention of that warding that person's wolf-like nature off from you. Is that Islam is a religion, yes, we're supposed to have good character and be nice, but that having good character and being nice does not mean you let people pick on you. It does not mean that you let people pick on other people. It does not mean that you have to humiliate yourself. On the contrary. That good character at times means that taking very firm stances. Good character means at certain times that if someone is that getting picked on, that you stand up for that particular individual. Is that if someone is being a wolf, is that you check that person, right? Within the boundaries of the things that you know that you can do and you cannot do. But is that I guarantee you, is that a wolf, who does the wolf want? The wolf wants that weak sheep. And this is the way that many of these people are. Is that, and this is the thing, is that some people, that if someone has a pure nature, they sometimes find it hard to believe that other people could actually do these things. Right? Because you're just like, I don't do that. What's wrong with these people? Why would they do it? But there's some people that are just messed up. It's real. There will be people, as that Brother Ryan said, will smile in your face while they metaphorically stab you while they're doing it. There's people that are like that. And there's people like that in the Muslim community, unfortunately, let alone when you that go beyond the Muslim community. You would be surprised that things that you would never cross your mind to do that people might do to you. So what is the balance then? Is that our deen doesn't require that we remain naive. It's good to be pure-hearted, yes, but a higher degree is to be aware that when you see people with wolf-like tendencies, is that you have the ability to put up your shield. And you have the ability to let that person know, like, that's not going to work with me. And then what's going to happen with that wolf is that what they're going to do is they're going to move on to the next sheep. They're going to move on to the next person. And that were they to find that shield that with everyone, is that they would think that a lot of this is useless and hopefully that find something that better to do. But this principle, if we could put that into practice in our relationships, is that you will find immense benefit in it. Immense benefit in it. And that one of the most difficult things that we can, that we have to strive to do, that in the time in which we live in particular, when all of the stuff is being said about Islam and Muslims and this and that, they can't turn on the television except that there's something that you hear. That there was this little short documentary that I was watching where this man was going around asking people how many countries that the U.S. is bombing right now. Did you all see that? Huh? You saw that this morning, right? And, what was the response? 1, 2, don't know. Many people don't know. They're not aware of that right now as we speak, and not getting into what's behind that and why and all of that. But all 7 countries are Muslim countries. All 7 countries are Muslim countries. Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Somalia, Libya. Which one am I missing? And Yemen. All 7 countries are Muslim countries. And that it's very easy for people from here that don't know anyone from those countries they're far away from it, they don't even think about it. Right? I lived in Yemen for many years. I lived in Yemen for 7 years of my life. I have a house in Yemen. Whenever I come across back over the border and that they ask me about Yemen, instead of trying to hide, I'd be like, I love Yemen. Absolutely. I offer them information. I say, I have a house in Yemen. I love Yemen. Yemen is a beautiful place. And there's the vast majority of the people there are good, amazing people. Yes, there's a lot of strife and difficulty right now at this particular stage, but the vast majority of Yemeni people I know are wonderful, beautiful, generous, genuine people. And when you're intimately connected to some of these countries, I lived in Syria as well. My wife is from Afghanistan. I've been to Afghanistan. That my kids are half Afghani. That when you've been to many of these countries, that a large percentage of my friends that are originally from Pakistan, that, subhanAllah, that you have a very different perspective. And that unfortunately there's a lot of ignorance that people have that in relation to this. But what I'm trying to say is that it is difficult that given the larger society in which we live, to be able to remain firm. And that this is not an easy, magical, simple solution that, okay, I learned something at night at the masjid and now that the rest of my day is all going to be fine in relation to my interactions. But I will say is that there is strength in groups. And so just the fact that we have a growing population of people that are like-minded, that believe in what we believe, that this creates strength from the bonds that we create. And our relationships are very, very important. And that many of those relationships that you have is that they'll help preserve you as you move forward in life. And you could just imagine what it would have been like in the earlier times. What would it have been like to convert in the early 1900s? What would it have been like to convert in 1950? What would it have been like to have been some of the early immigrants to this country in 1895 or something? It would have been very difficult. They didn't have beautiful masjids and that youth leaders and imams and resident scholars and huge communities. And they didn't have this. That it was very different then. But these privileges that we do have is that it helps facilitate for us. And it also indicates to us the importance of relationships. The last thing that I want to say before, if you do have any questions, that I will get with them. So we said that the first thing is that we need to be aware that if someone loves you for a worldly reason, is that if that thing is no longer there, it's very likely that they're going to cease to have that love for you, which means it's not true love. True love is a love that no matter what happens to you, is that love stays. The second thing was that if you see people being like sheep, that don't be a wolf, control yourself. And that if you see people being like wolves, don't be a sheep and get eaten. The last thing that I want to say is that given those principles, that we all have that different abilities in terms of how we can interact with people. And I'm going to bring it back to my life. Is that when I became Muslim, that some of those people that I was spending time with before Islam, that they were doing things that I no longer wanted to do. And it was as a result, we stopped spending time together. And one of the things that I had found is that by spending time with them, the language that they would use, the things that they used to talk about, it just simply was not a good influence on me. And the nature of my personality was that I couldn't maintain that relationship and call them to Islam. I was being drawn into what they were being drawn into. So I had to come to a conscious decision where I made the decision to say, look, it's probably better for me not to spend time with them then. Whereas my friend who I just quoted earlier, Osama, that he had a very different personality. He had the ability to enter into that conversations with these people and spend time with them and to be a good influence upon them as opposed to being dragged into what they were doing. And if that's the case, if someone has a personality like that in relation to these people that they can spend time with, is that they can influence them positively, then in general it's better that they maintain those relationships and help them. Whereas if someone feels like they're getting influenced negatively, is that you have to be very careful then who you spend your time with. And you have to be real with yourself. In other words, is that you have to know that who it is that you can act like that with and who it is that you can't. And if you find yourself getting drawn into something, is that you need to check yourself. And you need to be aware that being drawn into something that is going to harm you, is that even if you think that there's a moment of benefit or a moment of pleasure, is that many of the things that people are experimenting with now, is that unfortunately sometimes you don't get a second chance. You don't get a second chance. There are people that have become addicts with certain types of drugs like crystal meth, that one experiment, boom, done. they're addicted. These were people that were healthy, they were successful, they got good grades. They made one critical mistake, they became addicted in their life because it's highly addictive, something like the drug that I mentioned. Their life was completely ruined. Like by making one mistake. And we, nasallallahu salam wa afia, that we ask Allah tabarak wa ta'ala to protect us from it, but is that we have to understand that this is a reality. And that we need to prevent these types of things from happening to us so that we can live healthy lives and ultimately be successful. So that's about all that I wanted to say. I don't want to keep you too long. But if there's any other things that people would like to contribute as well, or ask about, or to have a little bit of a conversation, we can speak for a few minutes. Anyone? Ryan, do you know how to activate them?
So what was your inspiration coming to Islam? Was it your friends that influenced you, or was it just
I mean, it was definitely the influence of my friend. There's no doubt about that. And then there were specific reasons why. But in general, my path to Islam was a path of what I understand now is discovering the fitrah, the true nature of the human being. And I believed then, and I still believe now, is that the nature of the modern world is that it's taking people away from our true nature. There's something about society that's taking people away from our true nature. And my path to Islam was a process of discovering that, no, we have a true nature. And that's a nature that we've been created to know our Lord. And that these teachings of the Prophet ﷺ are the teachings that help you, that rediscover and then preserve that true nature. And so that was right at the heart of my conversion. There was a lot of details. And alhamdulillah. Very good question. How does one restrain our wolf-like nature? Great question. And I would probably say, although not for everyone, that generally speaking it's harder that if someone has a wolf-like nature to restrain yourself than it is for a person who's more sheep-like to be a little bit of wolf-like when they need be. You know, in most cases I would think that's, as you know, it's more difficult to do that. And I think that, one of the great ways that we can teach ourselves to restrain ourselves is by learning empathy. Empathy is that where you start to put yourself in the place of the other person. And all we have to do is think about our experiences of being around wolves and being manipulated and being burned and you giving yourself to someone and then they just throw you out to the wolves. And that hurts. And it's not only a very lowly person would want to repeat that and do that to someone else. Right? But if you know how you feel when you've been burnt, is that's one of the greatest ways is for you just to recognize, look, man, I don't want to do that to people. Right? People did that to me, and yes, I could, and we all know that happens in families, that the older brother that forces the younger brother to do something, and then the younger brother doesn't want to do it, so he forces the one who's even younger to do it, and then there's a trickle-down effect where finally the youngest of all has to do it, and it's just okay, he was treated like that, so he treats him like that, and he treats him like that, right? And sometimes this happens in ways, are, they're not as bad as kind of some of these other things that I'm trying to present. But I think that's the number one ways that we put ourselves in other people's shoes, is that we imagine that how it feels when we are the ones that are victims of that. And that we also remember the following. Is that everyone's heard of Tony Robbins? Tony Robbins, the famous motivational speaker. Am I getting old? Right. Anyhow, Tony Robbins is this famous motivational speaker. that He empowers people to do all kinds of things, to get their lives together and this type of thing. Anyhow, that he spoke about the reason he became a motivational speaker. Has anyone ever heard that story? So they were sitting there at dinner, and I believe I could be quoting this slightly wrong. It's been a while since I've heard him say it, but it was dinner time. It was a Christmas dinner, and he grew up in a very poor family, and they had no food. In non-Muslim American culture, that Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas dinner, these are very big things. You get together, oftentimes you have turkey and mashed potatoes and stuffing and all these types of things. I have to say, halal turkey dinner is probably my favorite meal still to this day. No offense to all of you that love biryani or whatever else that you eat, but I have to say I would take it that over that any of those other dishes, as much as I love all food, different types of food. My favorite food actually before becoming Muslim was Indian food. We used to go to the Royal Taj Mahal over in Campbell, California. Anyhow, that they were sitting there at the dinner table, and they had no food because they had no money. It was his father, mother, and him. And he said that his mother was just laying into the father, like, you good for nothing. You can't even provide your family dinner on Christmas. All this stuff, right? You can just imagine the chaos. And all of a sudden someone knocks on the door. And someone had known about their condition and brought them a nice big meal. And they put it on the table. And you'd think that everyone would be happy, right? They just got a meal. Well, it turns out it made the mother even more angry. Where the mother said, see, you can't even do it yourself. Someone else has to bring it for you. Right? She just kept going into laying into the father. And the father ended up just eating. And then he said that everyone responded differently. That the mother, it made her more angry. The father, that just saw it as a blessing and ate. And he says, as for me, he says, it made me realize that people care. That there are people in the world that care. And he said, I made an intention in that moment to dedicate my life to helping people. Every single person responded to that situation differently. And so we will choose how we respond. Is that if someone has been giving you a hard time and picking on you and troubling you and that showing these wolf-like characteristics, you have a choice. Right? You can either do the same thing to other people, or you can actually use that as saying, like, look, not only am I not going to do that to other people, I'm going to be that person who stands up to that wolf, puts them in their place, and do everything I can to prevent them from doing that to other people. And I'm going to protect the people that are sheep-like nature. And if you want to put this in the context of our Prophet ﷺ, is that never, ever, ever would he manipulate a sheep. Someone who has a sheep-like nature. He was the most gentlest of people, ﷺ, but he was also the most courageous. And they used to mention about the Prophet ﷺ in battle, when they're fighting war, is that Sayyidina Ali, who was the courageous of the courageous. And they said that كُنَّا نَتَّقِي بِرَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ إِذَا اشْتَدَّ الْبَأْسِ. They said in battle that we used to seek protection behind the Prophet ﷺ during the heat of the battle. That's who our Prophet was ﷺ. He was the most courageous of people. At the same time, he was the most gentle of people. And we combine that we've combined the best of both things. Jazakumullah khair. Any other comments? Take a couple more, inshallah. Young man? So the question was, do I feel a benefit to my life from converting to Islam? It's very hard to put into words how happy I feel and how much benefit has come to my life being Muslim. I can't imagine a life without Islam. Islam is everything. It's the only thing I have. And that I hope to that actualize the statement of our Prophet ﷺ is that our Prophet said, there's three things that if they're in someone, he will find through them the sweetness of faith. Okay? And one of the three is that a person, after they've been granted Islam, is that they detest, they hate to return to kufr, to disbelief, the way that they would hate to be thrown into a fire. So you can imagine someone throwing you into a fire, how much you would hate that. Our Prophet is teaching us is that you will taste the sweetness of faith, that if Allah blessed you with Islam, is that you hate to return to disbelief, kufr, the way that you would hate to be thrown into a fire. And that's something that we can always remember, inshallah ta'ala. So alhamdulillah. MashaAllah. So the brother's question was that we were talking about removing the toxic people from our lives, but that what do you do if you are that toxic person? And that is an amazingly introspective and beautiful question. And he's saying that for sake of conversation so that we can all benefit. And how do you come to know that? The very easy way to come to know that is to see how people are responding to you. Right? Do we carry ourselves in ways that people come to love us? Right? The sunnah of our Prophet ﷺ was, anyone who spent time with the Prophet, they came to love him. Okay? And that we're not stupid people. We know who likes us and who doesn't like us to a certain degree. And that one of the signs that we are toxic is that how do people respond to us? Do they want to spend time with us? Do they try to avoid us? Do they follow up? Do they reach out to us without us reaching out to them? There's a number of signs that we can determine that do people like us? Do they not like us? And so one of the signs is that how people respond to us. And so what that helps us do is it's one measure whereby which we can know if we're toxic or not. But then let's say that we do find that we are toxic. That what do we do then about that? Is that the beautiful thing about toxins is that they can be purified. And so that if you put that toxic person in an environment of people that are healthy and that filled with light, and that reached a degree whereby which that they can purify people of those toxins, is that's one of the greatest ways that people that can transform themselves is by being around people that they themselves they'll take away the toxins of the people. There's no better way. And that in the absence of that, you read about them. If you can't be around them, everyone can read about them. And the more that we read about them, is that the more that the heart opens up. And this is why every single young person in this room, but not just young people in this room, do you know how many times parents have come to me and say, can you teach my kids stories of the prophets? And I want to tell these poor parents, you've got it all wrong. What makes you think that the stories of the prophets are for children? Is that the stories of the prophets are for everyone. They're for everyone. They're for adults, they're for children, they're for everyone. And the stories of the righteous, they're for everyone. And we might not have heard this before, but we should be raising our children, and we should ourselves, if we are young, have a regular reading of the stories of the righteous. If you start reading about the noble people that lived, is that what's going to happen is your heart's going to... How could you read about the life of Muhammad Ali and know a lot about him? He had an opportunity... They were going to put a Hollywood star on the ground, but he refused to accept the Hollywood star, which is what everyone would dream of, worldly people that is, not religious people. But it had the name Muhammad. So he would have refused it. And so they put it, it's the only one that's on the side of the wall. I mean, look at how could you not love someone? Imagine, when I hear that, imagine when he meets the Rasul. Imagine when he meets the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How our Prophet is going to recompense him for that. He did not want the name of Muhammad to be desecrated, or denigrated. Isn't that amazing? I mean, how could you not love someone like that when you learn about a trait like that? Let alone when you learn about many of the other things. He was stripped of his world heavyweight championship title because he refused to go to Vietnam. His case went to the Supreme Court and he established a precedent where you and I today, we can say, no, I'm not going to war because I'm a conscientious objector. My religion does not permit me to do so. And we still have that privilege today here that as a result. How could you not love someone like that? We have to know these people. And then once you learn about great people and their great traits and the way that they were, is that you can't love them and know that about them except that you're going to start being like them. That's all there is to it. But if we let ourselves just be exposed to toxic people that live in up the life of this world, the fleeting pleasures of the dunya, then that it's not only not going to benefit us, but it's going to open up doors for us to go down a road that we really don't want to go. So we have to connect ourselves to the stories of the righteous, and that's one of the great hopes that we can have that purify ourselves of our toxicity, inshallah. Sister's question?
Yeah, the other question from the sister.
Sure.
They wanted to know how you tell yourself whether or not you're a sheep or a wolf.
Great question. So how do you know in and of yourself whether you are a sheep or you're a wolf? The fact of the matter is that the vast majority of us, there's times where we are more sheep-like and there's times that we are more wolf-like. So you could have the same person who's, let's say they're 10 years old and their name is Zayd. Is that Zayd in relation to his 6-year-old brother sometimes is more wolf-like. Right? Because it's his younger brother, that he can pull the age on him, he can get him to do things, right? But that same Zayd, when he goes to school, there might be someone who's 3 or 4 inches taller than him and then much bigger than him, that person has an older brother back home that implementing some of those same things that his brother does to him on Zayd at school. Right? So Zayd in relation to that person at school is more like a sheep than he is like a wolf in relation to his own brother. So the vast majority of us, right, that in different positions and at different times that there's more sheep-like tendencies and there's more wolf-like tendencies. The one thing I will say about that is that there are people by nature that are softer than others. And there's some people that are harder. We know that. And that part of that is nature. And the second aspect that is that the way that someone was raised. If you've been exposed to a wolf-like environment for too long, how could you not become wolf-like? Right? There's people that grow up in very tough circumstances where they become like that for survival. So part of it is your temperament, how you are, your nature, and part of it is your social circumstances. And I think one of the ways that we can come to determine that is to think about our different relationships. And I know it might seem like a weird thing that if you're 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, 16 years old, what do you mean go home and think about my relationships? But if you spend a little bit of time thinking about some of your close friends, that some of your younger brothers and sisters, some of the older people that you interact with, it will come clear to you very easily that where are you kind of more in a sheep-like relationship and where are you more in a wolf-like type relationship. And the key then is that you carry yourself in a way where that you don't let that wolf that manipulate you. Right? And then at the same time is that you don't try to get over on the sheep. Now, I don't want you all to think that just because your older brother or sister asks you to do something, they're being like a wolf. So understand that I'm just giving a principle that, has to be applied appropriately. You can't go home and say, you're being a wolf, or I'm not going to let you be a wolf. Right? You helping and listening to an older brother and sister and that type of thing, and that's not a bad thing. There's a difference between that being asked to do something or that, then being manipulated. But finding that balance is really what this is all about, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. Khair, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. So you all have to do me a favor. You all have to make dua for me, inshallah. Do you all remember my name? You don't remember my name, do you? Yahya. Yahya. Inshallah we meet again, inshallah soon. Salam.